When the siren pulled up outside, winding down from a shriek to a growl, Goff raced around the room and looked out the window, through the cracked, filthy glass, down to the street 2 floors below. "What is it?" she said. "Is it a fire?" "No, it's not a fire," he said. They heard banging on the door below, and shouts. "Jesus Christ," Goff said. "Better get dressed." "What's going on?" she said. "I don't know," he said. He didn't tell her it was the cops. "Just put your clothes on. Hurry. I'll go see." He walked down the dark staircase to the ground floor. Cops. His heart was hammering a warning in his chest. His thoughts were a flurry of confusion, fear, and dread. His hands were shaking as he worked the deadbolt lock and opened the door. There were 2 cops on the front step. One was a woman, her face grim. She was wearing her hat and glasses and was the younger of the 2. The big one, without a hat, was bald on top with a big nose and a dark mustache, thick lips, a heavy jaw, and fat cheeks that nearly buried his squinty eyes. Goff looked at the 2 of them and said, "What's the problem, officers?" He wanted to sound the trumpet of innocence, but terror put a thin crack in his voice. His face felt flushed. Cops were unnerving. Cops made him feel guilty, always had. "We got a complaint is the problem," said the big cop. He filled the door ominously. He was chewing gum, and he spoke almost as if he was making a joke. "A complaint about what?" Goff said. The big cop looked at him and snorted, half smiled. "This building is condemned," the female cop said. "It's supposed to be vacant." "I have written permission from the owner to be in here," said Goff, taking a piece of paper from his back pocket. Unfolding it, holding it before him for their inspection, he said, "He gave me the key." The big cop took the paper and glanced at it, handed it back to his partner. "The building is still condemned," he said. "This paper don't change that. And nobody's supposed to be in here. Nobody. I don't care what or for what reason." Well, look, I don't want any trouble," Goff said. "I thought it was okay, but if it's a problem, I'll be happy to leave." "Happy," the big cop said, looking over Goff's shoulder up the stairs. "What are you doing here anyway?" "I'm a photographer," Goff said. "I'm taking pictures." 7:30 in the morning on a Sunday and you're in a condemned building taking pictures, the big cop said. He turned his head to share this information with his partner and smiled. The radio in the police car squawked and the female cop went to answer it. The big cop stared at Goff. He put a hand on the door jamb and leaned on it, as if he were tired. "What's the deal?" he said. "What are you up to?" "I told you I'm a photographer," Goff said. "I'm just taking pictures. I'm not up to anything. Honest." "Honest," the big cop said, once again looking past Goff into the abandoned building. "You here alone?" "No," Goff said. "My assistant is here with me." "Your assistant," the big cop said, smiling and moving his head slowly back and forth, as if he thought Goff were trying to make a joke, but not a very funny one. "Yes," said Goff. He wanted the questioning to stop, but he didn't know how to do it. He didn't like the way the cop repeated everything he said, smashing his own words back in his face. "Listen, what's this all about? I haven't done anything, and you pull up here with sirens, and what's going on? You're kind of jumpy, aren't you?" "No, I think you are." "Well, the sirens, you live around here?" "No, I live in the city, but not around here." "People see strangers trespassing on a Sunday morning. They want to know what's going on. They see people in a deserted building. They wonder what's going on." "I understand that, but I've already told you I wasn't doing anything. I was just taking pictures." "Yeah, you told me. You were taking pictures. What kind of pictures you taking in a place like this?" "This hasn't got anything to do with drugs, if that's what you're thinking," Goff said. "I can see how someone might think that." "Got crack houses all over the place around here," the big cop said. "Storefront churches and crack houses, side by side. Quite a cozy little neighborhood." "I haven't got anything to do with that," Goff said. "Okay," the big cop said. "I'm not here about that anyways. I find we go in that direction. That's a different story. Listen, why don't I call the owner of the building and he'll tell you that I'm a photographer and he gave me permission to use his building for some pictures. Can we just call him? At 7 o'clock on a Sunday morning? He'll be home. I'm not talking about him. I'm talking about you, being here, now. Goff tried his best to smile, act natural, at ease. It's the only time I can get off. I work the rest of the week. You're a photographer, the big cop said. You work for a paper? Actually, I have a job with a landscaping outfit, Sanders and Sons. I work on one of the crews. So you're not really a photographer. Well, I don't earn my living at it, if that's what you mean. You just like to take pictures. You own a camera. Hey, I own a camera. I guess I'm a photographer too. Is that right? It's more serious than that, I'd say. I would too. I want to see some ID. Goff took out his wallet, removed his driver's license, handed it to the cop. The man checked it briefly, took his weight off the door jamb, looked out into the street. He kept the card. That your car, he said. Yes, Goff said. You leave it there long, they'll strip it, the cop said. I'll go, okay, Goff said. Not yet, the cop said. We also got a complaint that somebody's running around butt naked in this building, upstairs. Somebody with tits. You know anything about that? Goff took a deep breath and it seemed to catch and rattle in his lungs. I asked you a question, the cop said. It's not what you think, Goff said. What do I think, the cop said, smiling again. I can explain all of this, Goff said. Yeah, said the cop, I'll bet. You and me are going to go up and take a look at what you're doing here. He turned to his partner in the car and said, I'm going up with him. You stay here with the car. The woman in the car nodded in the way of people who are used to taking orders. Let's go, said the big cop. I'm telling you, all I was doing was taking pictures, said Goff. The big cop didn't reply, only motioned impatiently with his hand. Goff turned and started slowly back up the stairs. The girl had a frightened look on her face when the two men walked into the room. No one spoke. The big cop looked around. Scraps of wallpaper curled on the walls. Plaster was cracked and in some spots torn away back to the old wooden lathing. The wooden floor was warped and buckled and covered with dust, broken plaster, glass, rags, pipes, wine, pop and beer cans, newspaper, and assorted garbage. Looking like a giant, black, long-legged insect or a futuristic, one-eyed creature from space, Goff's camera and tripod stood in front of one of the walls, the one with the window that looked out onto the street. It had no plaster, only wood and old red brick, with gray mortar between the layers, squeezing out like hamburger in a bun. The big cop walked over to the window and looked down through the dusty pane to his car, 2 floors below. When he moved, his gun and equipment on his belt jangled, and his big black shoes crunched through the debris on the floor. Then he turned back from the window to look at Goff and said, This your assistant? Goff said, Yes. Shit, the cop said. I want to know what the fuck you were up to in here, and I don't want any more of your happy horse shit. I told you, taking pictures, said Goff, that's all. With your assistant here, the big cop said, raising his voice. Goff swallowed. Okay, she's not my assistant, he said. She's a model. The big cop laughed out loud. A model, he said. Hey, honey, are you a model, he asked her, his voice twisting with sarcasm. She nodded her head. How old are you, sweetheart, he said. 18, she said. The big cop laughed again louder, as if he had finally found something funny to laugh at. She is, Goff said. She's 18. Shut your mouth, the big cop said. She's fucking jailbait pussy and you're in a bag of shit, mister. You're up here making porno pictures. That's what you were doing. No, that's not true, Goff said. Listen, I take photographs of her family. I've been doing it for years and I've got a release signed by her mother. Goff went to his bag and tore it open, found the paper, and offered it to the cop. His head was shaking. His hand was shaking. The cop didn't reach for it. You got permission for everything, don't you, he said. Your mother know you're making porno pictures, honey, he asked the girl. The girl did not reply. Her face was red, her lips were trembling, her eyes were filling with tears. That's not what we were doing, Goff said. She is a model. You paying her for this? Yes, said Goff. How much you paying you, luscious, to do this here modeling, the big cop said. $15, the girl said. The big cop laughed and said, shit, $15. Now look here, Goff said. You're making this out to be something it's not. Shut up, the cop said. He was chewing the gum and his big jaw was working it viciously. I told you to shut your mouth and I don't want to tell you again. You got that? Goff nodded his head. I ain't making Nothing out. Don't try and give me that shit. You've been bullshitting me from the moment I saw you. I suppose you bring her mom and daddy over here for the family pictures too, huh? The cop laughed and spit on the floor. Bullshit. You're up here taking dirty pictures is what you're doing, and maybe having yourself a little free orgy time, dipping your wick while you're at it. That's what's been going on. Now, ain't it? Goff said, I was taking pictures, that's all. That's the truth. Pictures of what? Said the cop. Her bald little slice? Of her, said Goff. With her clothes off, said the cop, working his gum. Yes, said Goff, but there was nothing dirty about it. They were nude studies. The big cop laughed loudly and chewed his gum. Yeah, he said, nude studies. You cracked me up. I'm sorry, Goff said, but that's what they're called. Who calls them that? The cop said. People do, said Goff. Artists. Art lovers. Oh, art lovers, the cop said. Hell, I love art. I'm a big art lover. Let me see one of your nude studies. I can't. The film's not developed, Goff said. It's still in the camera. So you can still show me, the cop said. Goff and the girl stood there. Come on, show me what you was doing, the cop said. If it's all so innocent and artistic, show me. Right now. The girl started to cry, put her hands to her face. Her shoulders were shaking. You can't do this, Goff said. Fuck I can't, said the cop. I got a complaint. I want to know what the fuck you two were doing in here. Goff said, I told you. You told me a lot of things, the cop said. A lot of bullshit. One lie right after another. I want a lawyer, Goff said. The cop laughed again. You got something to hide? I have a right to talk to a lawyer, Goff said. You can have one, the cop said. You're going to need it. But right now I'm conducting an investigation. Right now you're a suspect in trespassing, vagrancy, and soliciting a minor, and pandering obscenity, and I don't know what all indecency charges. So you better show me what you were doing, pal, or we can start adding obstruction of justice to the list. She's legal age. I have a model release. I never forced her to do anything, Goff said. I want to see, said the cop. You show me what you were doing. You say it's nothing. You say it's art. Fine, let's see. Show me your art. Goff turned to the girl. Her head was down and her shoulders were still shaking. Kelly, he said. I'm not, the girl said, sobbing. Come on, Kelly, said the cop. You show me what you were doing or we're all going straight to jail. Then we'll call your parents. See what they've got to say about all this. He was taking pictures of me, she said. That's all. Uh-huh, the cop said. Were your clothes on or off? The girl did not reply. Kelly, the cop said. Off, said the girl, but there was nothing wrong. So let's go, said the cop, chewing his gum. Let's go. Take 'em off. What's wrong now? Is there something wrong now? Don't let me stop you. I'm a cop. There's nothing wrong with me, is there? The girl wiped her face with a sleeve. Is there? He shouted. No, the girl said. So if there's nothing wrong, go ahead, said the cop. I want you to show me, and I'm getting tired of asking. Now let's go. Slowly the girl unbuttoned her shirt. She kept her head down and her eyes on the floor. She had long brown hair. She took off the shirt. She wasn't wearing a bra. She unstrapped her jeans and pulled down the zipper. Goff noticed that her feet were still bare, and he could see her white silk underpants sticking out of one of the pockets of her jeans. The girl pulled off her pants and stood before them naked. The cop worked his gum and said, So you're 18, Kelly? Yes, the girl said without looking up. Her head was down and her arms were crossed over her breasts. You should raise your rates, Kelly, the cop said. $15, you're worth a hell of a lot more than that. You could double that easy across the river. Goff said nothing, wondered who could have seen them. Across the street, through the window, 7 o'clock, Sunday morning, 1,000,000 to 1 chance. He cursed his luck. So what now, the cop said, turning to Goff. You take your clothes off too? No, Goff said. Listen, it's completely different with you here. Yeah, I'll bet it is, the cop said, laughing loudly. I don't mean that, said Goff. You take pictures of her mother like this, the cop said? This must be some fucking family. What was she doing? Once she got her clothes off, then what did she do? She was standing over there against that wall, Goff said, pointing to the wooden slats and the raw red brick. Go ahead, Kelly, the cop said. Stand there like you was. Numbly, the girl shuffled to the wall and stood against it. Like that, the cop said. No, said Goff, she was posing. Oh, yeah, posing, the cop said. You mean like fingering herself and pretending to come and like that? No, Goff said, blushing in shame and anger. Not like that. Nothing like that. Do something, Kelly, he said. Show him. I don't want to, the girl said, not looking up, and she began to cry again. Let's go, the cop said loudly. You show me what you were doing. The girl raised her arms and stood against the wall. Her hair tumbled down over her face and stuck where it was wet with tears. She raised her arms but kept her head bowed. What's that supposed to be, the cop said. It's not supposed to be anything, Goff said. It's just a pose. You like that? Yes, it's... What's she supposed to be doing, the cop said. I don't get it. Nothing, said Goff. It's an image. I'm trying to contrast the texture of her skin with the brick on the wall, and her hair with that wiring, and her youth and innocence with all this wreckage and decay. It's a study in contrasts. That's all I was trying to do. Her youth and innocence, the cop said. She had to get naked before you could see her youth and innocence. I'm a photographer, Goff said. I work in images like this, with light. How are you with untapped pussy, the cop said, chewing his gum. Kelly, you a virgin? I swear to you I never touched her, Goff said. Tell him, Kelly. He didn't touch me, she said, sobbing. Jesus, what's wrong with you, the cop said. You queer? I'm married, said Goff. Not to her you ain't, said the cop. I'm cold, said the girl, her voice shaking. We didn't do anything. I'll be the judge of that. We got laws against this kind of shit, the cop said. Can I put my clothes on now, the girl said. I'm cold. The cop chewed his gum. Let me see you take her picture first, he said to Goff. Come on, just like you were doing. Goff hesitated, then bent over the camera, looked through it, and took a picture. Take another, said the cop. Goff snapped the shutter again. The motor drive whirred. Okay, the cop said. Now you can put your clothes on. He watched her do it, chewing his gum. Then he stepped to the camera and removed it from the tripod. He rewound the film, opened the camera, and took out the roll. Shoot any more, he asked Goff. No, said Goff. What are you going to do with my film? I'm keeping it for evidence, the cop said. He put it in his pocket. ID, he said to the girl. This isn't fair, the girl said. She was crying again. We weren't doing anything. ID, said the cop. Let's go. If you weren't doing anything, then you ain't got nothing to worry about. She got her driver's license out of her purse and gave it to him. Goff began to put his equipment away. The cop moved around the room as if looking for something else, crunching debris underfoot. Why the fuck you come to this dump anyway, the cop said. Jesus Christ, haven't you ever heard of a motel? I told you, Goff said. I wanted this place for the contrast. Yeah, you said, the cop said. At 7 in the morning? For the light, Goff said. The light, the cop said. Bullshit. You thought nobody would see you. The light coming through that window, Goff said. The morning sun, on her skin. The brick, it's gone now. So are you, the cop said. Let's go. He followed them down the stairs. Goff locked the door. The cop went to his car, got in. They could see him looking at their licenses, making notes, talking to his partner. What's he going to do, the girl said. Then the cop got out of his car, walked slowly over to them, handed back the licenses. Don't come back, he said, permission or not. You hear me? Don't come back. I won't, Goff said. I'll be watching you, the cop said. Mr. Art Lover. Goff drove off, trying to soothe her, trying to calm himself. He told her the cops always hassle guys with cameras. It was nothing to worry about. Cops are suspicious people, and they always think that a guy with a camera is up to something. No good. He'd been hassled before, several times, and all of that was true. But Goff knew that this time was different. Even as he told her everything would be okay, his own voice sounded to him as if he was reaching for conviction. He felt unfairly trapped under a cloud of suspicion, one that wasn't going to go away. The big cop watched them go, then went back to his car and got in. So what do we say in the report? His partner said. I'll handle it, the big cop said. He was just taking pictures. Some inner city bullshit documentary or something. What about the naked woman? Was that the girl? I don't know what the fuck it was, said the cop. People seeing things. I run them off anyways. It's nothing. Let's go. I'm hungry.